So in this series, we're going to be talking about the drums in the drop section. But before I jump in, I'm going to quickly plug in my free sample pack here, link in the description. I've basically taken samples from this remix and samples that I think will be useful in your own productions and put them in the sample pack. I'm also selling the project file, so if you want to go through the project with me, have a bit of a play around yourself with the chains, see how each effect is working, and maybe take your own chain, then I'm selling that as well. So link in the description. Right, so let's start. So I'm going to be talking about the drums. So these parts up here, as you can see, I've grouped it quite weirdly. So instead of having a drum group, I've just had a kick group, snare group, and so on. And then I've summed it here into kick, snare, sum, not kick, snare, sum. This is so that I can duck it. So duck the audio other than the kick and the snare, so that every time it hits, it's got that temporary amount of space. But I haven't used a compressor, I've actually used this gain plugin. The reason why is because I can control the curve of how it goes back to its normal level. But in a compressor you can't, it just goes up by itself back to its original level. So yeah, and you can see the kind of the pattern of the kick and snare here. But I just want to emphasize that this is not kick, snare. So that's not including the percussion. So the percussion goes into not kick, snare. Just wanted to make that clear. Alright, so let's start with the kick. Let's actually listen to just the whole pattern. Oh. Right, cool, I think you get the message. So yeah, it's very simple, and I wanted to make this very hard hitting when the kick was playing. It is quite slow. But yeah, I want to make it hard hitting. So let's start with kick 1. So as you can see, kick 1 is actually muted. So while I was crafting the kick, I just decided this layer didn't really work out, so I just muted it. So my creative process is that I create this in FL Studio and then I bounce it down into Ableton. And the reason why instead of bouncing down the whole kick, I actually bounce down the kick layers, as you can see, just so that when I'm mixing the drop, the kick, snare, and other percussion, like I may need to change it, and I'll have more control of it if I can work on the individual layer. So it's got that flexibility just in case I need to really dive down again into the kick as I'm mixing it through. So let's mute the kick group channel, the kick layers group channel. Another quick reminder, I've got this minus 10 dB, just so I've got a headroom for the master, and I've done that for every channel. Not 10, like around 10 dB. I've kind of tweaked it a bit. So I've got like loads of headroom at the master. But for the sake of the tutorial, I've actually plus 10 dB, just for demonstration. So I put this just for the tutorial. I just want to make everything super clear, since I don't want to leave you guys on your own for the people that do buy the project file. I really want to explain everything and not just leave you out in the open. So right, let's start with the kick. Let's go and move on to the next layer since the first one was muted. So you actually see my work process as well. And it's okay to leave some things out, like I have done. So, yep, that's muted. Let's just solo the kick. So I've got the kick roll. This is like a creative effect. I did this sound design kick element in FL Studio. Didn't feel the need to do any mixing on this one. So this is just like a really subtle effect just to add impact. I've done it every other kick just to add interest because it's really simple rhythm. So the processing. This is like the lower end. Oh, no, this is the lower end. So you kind of hear them individually, the different characteristics of the kick. So what I like to do is I like to break down the kick into like different characteristics. So you've got the lower end, the higher end, the transient part, or like combinations of some possible characteristics of the kick. And then I process those characteristics individually and really enhance, really bring up the characteristic that I want out of the overall kick. So the lower end of the kick. And here you can see I've been really picky with the frequencies. So here is 92, 184 hertz, and then as you can see they're actually multiples of each other, so it's double, 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 and then it decreases in dB as the frequencies go up. But the reason why I've done this is because this frequency is actually the key of the remix. So if I just go frequency to note, so this is an EQing tip. Frequency to note. So what I like to do, I like to use this as a starting point. So what key is 92 hertz? Or sorry, I found out the key beforehand, and then I found out the hertz value. So it's F sharp. So then F sharp, and then it's multiples of that. Kind of like how any melodic sound is. You got the fundamental and then the harmonics as it goes up. So I really wanted to emphasize the fundamental in this kick. This ABM. I'll turn this off. On, off. So this EQ really like defines the kick, really makes it stick through. And there's not even that much boosting going on. Like the main bulk of the sound is here because it's a kick, and this is just to get more character of the kick. This is just the taste at the end. So that's something you can experiment with in your remixes or originals. And then here, I've actually boosted the sides. So this is a mid-side EQ. So boosting the sides will so that's the stereo information. I'm going to do a tutorial on a mid-side EQ and how I use it. But the mid-side EQ, so I'm boosting the stereo information and I'm not affecting the mids. That's the difference between Oh my god. A mid-side EQ and a normal EQ. So a normal EQ processes the mids and the sides together. Mid-side EQ, you can really break down the sound and EQ the mono information on its own, or EQ the stereo, the sides, on its own. So I wanted to leave the mids alone because that's what makes it central in the mix, and the sides can make it more apparent in the mix. So that kind of gives it a bit more, makes it a bit more noticeable compared to, well, with all the other elements mixed in, where it contributes to it. And then I re-level it at the end because I gain all this level. And then this is the next kick sound. So you really hear the character of the kick now. This doesn't make a difference. I'll turn this off. But yeah, where you can use a gate in a kick. In fact, I'm going to save that for another tutorial. There's quite a lot you can do with a gate and kick drum. The main thing with a gate, with a kick drum, you can actually edit the dynamic envelope. So the way it kind of goes like that. So you may want to cut the tail or change the attack, weaken the attack. But I'll save that for another tutorial. So here I've got very similar EQ to the one I had before, so I'm very picky with my frequencies, but I've changed the bandwidth of each frequency band. So even though they're very similar EQs, this part of the kick, which is like the higher end, just really makes the, like, really emphasizes the tuning of the kick to make it to add to the kick being really hard hitting. So if I just, this is quite an apparent effect, so you really notice it. That's off with both EQs on both layers. On. Oh, play both of them. So you really hear that punch through like a bit more, even though it's in isolation on its own. It's definitely like a lot more emphasized, and it's not even that much processing. But I just want to add something here. So you really need to be picky with the original kick samples. Like if they're bad quality, then EQing a bad quality kick is still going to be a bad quality kick. So make sure you've got good quality samples. I'll also be releasing a larger sample pack with kicks like this. But this kick is actually in the sample pack, so you can just put it straight in, and it should work straight away with only like minimal mixing. Oh, okay. Right, group channel. So this sounds a lot more central. It kind of is. I feel it's a lot more placed in the mix. So I'm going to A/B the whole group. Off. See, it really takes up a lot of space, but with this, it's a lot more controlled. So I probably did this while I was mixing everything in. So instead of me like soloing and muting everything in the drop and the kick, I'm actually going to leave this for you guys to A/B everything and see how it all fits together. But it's all down to practice. But I reckon if the project file will really help you notice things and and think about other things when you're mixing things together by listening to how I put things together. So yeah, I've just narrowed the stereo width. That's what I hear with this channel. And so here I've really been picky with the frequencies again. I'm not going to go through that again, I've been through that twice. But the mid-side EQ here, this is a slightly different technique. So here, this is the mids, and then this is the sides. I've taken all the sides out the low end. So there's no stereo information in the low end, in other words. So that's what makes it sound a lot more central. And like playing in a big system, this will really help it punch through on a large system. I'm sure you've heard loads of YouTubers say that, but that's what it does, and this is one of the techniques you can do to make it stand out on a bigger system. But I've also taken it further by using this plugin here. It's Center by Waves. The link of this will be in the description. So here you got the lows. It splits the lows and the highs, and you can point them towards the center or the sides. But here I just wanted everything to be center, so this is probably the effects you hear the most. And I've also turned the sides down quite a lot. So there's not much stereo information, it's all pretty much mono. But it's got that a bit of stereo information on the high end just so it can breathe a bit, so it doesn't sound too dull. So it's quite a little bit of interest and quite powerful and like controlled. And here you can see on the meter down here that I've got loads of headroom. I know in the meter here is near 0 dB, but that's from this for the sake of the tutorial. So yeah, we've still got room to add more if we want to. Add more effects, make it add effects that'll make it louder. Is that everything in the kick? So I've also got a kick snare sum channel, but I'll go into that after I've talked about the kick and the snare. So let's move on to the snare. I'm going to shoot myself across.
Go ahead.
I start turning to the left again.
Alright, I'm going to make it hopefully.
Damn, really? That's a miss? Come on.
I'm on their boat.
Anchor him.
They got one hole.
Yep, it's the anchor.
I anchored.
Stop tipping. You're a little too.
Oh, sorry.
I killed both of them.
Okay.
They got captains.
Turn too much. I can't even get a shot.
Hold.
Yep,
They've got at least 4 holes.
They got captains. That's it.
There we go. We should be lined up
Did
again.
we take a hole?
Yeah, I got it.
Alright.
They just got captains. I'm swimming back.
Another one for the clip hunter.